this was exactly where Inigo was standing when they came up. We were just like pottering around. His face just went white. They said, "Are you Inigo Philbrick?" And he said, "Yes." And then suddenly more men came in with bulletproof vests on, and that was it. He was marched out of the shop and put into a car. The two cars pull in here. I was held back by two guys in the car, and then he was marched over here. I got out of the car and I ran towards this gate, which had opened only for like a brief moment. He was being marched with his hands behind his back onto this plane that was sitting there. And that's the last time I saw him for 2 years.
Were you scared?
No, no, knowing what I know today, I should have been scared.
$40 million, $42 million.
The world auction record.
The highest grossing auction of all time.
Inigo was a great storyteller. To become a good art dealer, it's about telling a story.
Money was literally shooting out of the ground around me.
It was so extreme and so opulent. I thought, my God, he must be the top art dealer in London right now.
The clubs, the drugs, the booze, the planes, the suits, it became about that. He just became delusional with success.
I never believed in love at first sight, but obsession from first sight you can definitely have.
I just got this feeling. I was like, oh God, this is gonna be messy. I didn't know how messy.
I was just wondering, how can Inigo afford all of this? Where is it all coming from?
You could sell the same painting 5 times to 5 different people.
I thought, oh my God, if anyone finds out about this, I'm gonna get in trouble.
He knew it wasn't gonna last. He knew the writing was on the wall.
He became something else, a monster.
It just crumbles, like the house of cards just crumbled.
His whole life and career was built on lies.
Wealthy people, they're rich for a reason. They don't like losing money.
This was the largest art-based fraud in U.S. history.
The official number is 86 million, but it could be much bigger.
He said, look, if I have to go somewhere, would you come with me?
And then from one day to the next, poof.
He's gone. Inigo is nowhere to be found, and he's left this trail of destruction in his wake.
Everyone was asking the same thing. Where is Inigo Philbrick?
This call is from a federal prison. From
Philbrick.
To accept this call, press 5.
Hello, sir.
Longer wait for the phone line than normal.
Oh, really? Is there always a bit of a queue?
Yes, always.
How many phones do they have?
4 phones for 122 people. I think in the story, it's going to be a lot to tell.
How are you?
Where should we start? Let's start at the beginning.
I wanted to be an art dealer. That was my ambition. And at the time, it had to be in London because it was the center of the universe.
A very good morning and welcome to London Heathrow, where the local time here is 7:50 a.m.
I felt like I was going to find my destiny. I felt like this was the start of my real life. At that point, I can't claim that I'd imagined a path, but I was inventing myself. I got an internship at White Cube. White Cube is, at the time, one of the sexiest, if not biggest, galleries in the world. Jay Jopling, who owns White Cube Gallery, was the Lord and Master in the world for contemporary art. I was very, very, very keen to staying where I was and making it work. I didn't want to go back to America, because for me at that time, going back to America meant going back to Connecticut. I was offered a part-time gig at White Cube, and I said I would love to take the job, I'd love to stay and work, but I need a visa, because I'm a US citizen. So I went to Goldsmiths on a student visa.
Goldsmiths is a special place where you can study art and ideas around art. That's produced many, many superstar artists. For example, someone like Antony Gormley and Damien Hirst. In parallel to those artists, you have the next generation of critics, curators, gallerists, and art dealers. So I first came across the name Inigo Philbrick because he was a prospective student. And funnily enough, his father had been taught by me. Now, nepotism doesn't work like that in Goldsmiths, but I always find it really exciting that someone who is in the art world, that there are generations in a family who might wish to pursue it. So I remember giving him a place. He seemed unusually confident. It was a confidence that surprised me. I got a sense that day one, I didn't know why he wanted to be there, but behind what he was saying, he almost certainly did know why he wanted to be there. He was disarmingly charming, and I think charm is not something to underestimate. Charm is a tool, potentially a weapon.
What did you get out of Goldsmiths?
I was there because I needed this to stay in the country and keep working at the gallery that I was working at, but I wanted to be an art dealer. But at the time, the art market on the commercial side is falling to bits, literally falling down around our ears.
There's been meltdown on the world's financial markets. Shares have plummeted around the world, billions wiped off their value.
Brought down by bad mortgage investments, Lehman, which has 25,000 employees, will be liquidated.
It was a crazy, febrile time. The art market was in this weird, jittery state where nobody quite knew what was going to happen.
Everybody was like, oh my God, what this means for the art market. There was a lot of anxiety. How would the art market do? The art market did fine, flying colors.
As often happens in breakdowns, people make money. You saw a huge number of investors coming into the market. Prior to this moment, the market was very much in the hands of connoisseurs and real collectors. But then art became an asset class where it's pure speculation.
$28 million at $29 million.
And selling at $38 million.
That's a world record for him as well, so we're thrilled with that.
What you get after the financial crisis is a lot more money in the system. And then you just start getting record after record.
A painting Pablo Picasso created in just one day has set a world auction record.
Fair warning, and selling at $95 million. Nick, your bidder at $95 million.
At the time, I think White Cube was sort of 150 people, and Jay's circle within that was much, much, much smaller. So how do you secure a position? You know your shit. I started asking my boss, can I have this catalog? Can I have that catalog? And I made it my job to know every series I could possibly know of every artist. I was an intern 5 days a week, and so I was always available to stay late. And I would get on my laptop, and I would read auction results. YCube was really growing at this time, which was very exciting because every couple of weeks I had new responsibilities and was earning more money. But I'm in the marketplace. I'm in the beating heart of where commercial things happen. And I'd get much better at this as I got older, of just being observant and seeing what are other people doing and what is expected and what is the right way to play things.
The founder of that gallery, Jay Jopling, created the most exponential growth in contemporary art in this country that no one has seen before. No one has ever seen this in London before.
Jay and I really hit it off. I think it was unusual for Jay to be with someone who really had strong opinions, and I always had strong opinions. I wasn't in touch with my dad by this point, and Jay was definitely a surrogate father figure, and I was definitely a adopted son type of figure. You know, I don't think either of us knew, obviously, what adventures were in store, but it really laid the groundwork.
There are certain criteria that I look for, firstly, whether that artist is making work that feels different, that stays in the mind, that stands out in some way, whether it changes the way one looks at familiar things.
And now it's Jesus lying on his back, the whole skeleton. Like that, with it coming up in a cross. So it's like on a crucifix, so it's longer that way than it is that way. I might call it piss on God or something.
Jay Jopling is one of the great, most successful gallerists in the world, and Inigo is right in the center of this. He's right at the pointy bit of the pin.
The first time I heard the name of Inigo Philbrick, it was at Christie's. Auction season in New York, it's like the biggest theater for the art world. The who is who of the art world show up. There's the Gagosian camp, there's the White Cube camp, there are the Aquavellas, the Neymards, the Mugrabis. You know, there's Leonardo DiCaprio, and there is some celebrity or a model. And we kind of have to spot them for our coverage, just to kind of sizzle things up a little bit. My friend and my colleague, Charlotte, she says, "Oh, do you see that bloke over there? That's Inigo." And there's this young bloke, very handsome. He has this kind of like blonde curls, you know, a little stubble. You know, I mean, he's a great looking guy, you know. So she's like, "Yeah, with the White Cube. You know, he works for White Cube." And so if the White Cube camp brings Inigo to these very important auctions, it sends a message. He's trusted.
I became the guy that Jay deployed to deal with the auction houses. Walking into an auction house with him when I was 22 was thrilling because, you know, this is the big guy and I'm with him, and my opinion matters.
He came across as very much a typical product of the art market. He was well-spoken, he was good-looking, he was personable, he was thin. Why did Jay Jopling particularly back him? Well, I think it's always an advantage to be, you know, the wunderkind. As the French say, he was his poulain, he was his foal, and he was going to back him and see how far he could go.
Inigo Philbrick mirrored the people that he worked with, the people that he did business with. In a way, he was what they wanted him to be. He projected bits of themselves, you know, back onto themselves. He was very good at tapping into what people wanted and getting people, quite eminent people at the very beginning, to have faith in him, which was important because the art market is completely unregulated.
There is, I think, a deep and pervasive allergy within the art world to any sort of transparency. There are things that go on that would be unethical, illegal, immoral, anywhere else. The art world really views secrecy as key to its survival. When you're dealing with a market that is so unregulated, a lot of trust comes into play.
A very important Andreas Gursky photograph came up at Christie's. I go and I am bidding for Viktor Pinchuk, who's a Ukrainian billionaire tied in with Bill Clinton. And I know this is of absolutely massive importance because this is one of White Cube's 2 or 3 biggest collectors, and I represent one of the 10,000-pound gorillas who's meant to make this auction happen.
One of the things that happens at auction, which looks odd from the outside, is that collectors want to remain anonymous and not have the world know who bought a particular work. So they ask an intermediary to bid for them.
This piece comes up at Christie's in the evening sales, so probably around 9 p.m. New York time, and Viktor Pinchuk is in Ukraine. I call, no answer.
$1 million, gentleman's bid.
Finally, huh? Obviously knocked out of sleep. And Victor speaks English, but not great English. And I don't know if it's my cell service or if it's the international line.
1,100,000 in the room now.
I say, the bidding's at $1 million. Do you want to bid? Is that a bid, sir? So I bid. Right. It's with us. Ugh. And again, I'm like, is that good or bad? Am I doing the right thing? I don't know. I was shaking like a leaf.
1,500,000.
It's against us. It's $1.5 million. Do you want to bid? Ugh.
And 4,200,000 on the telephone.
We pay a world record at the time for any photograph ever. In that moment, the entire commercial art world has its eyes on you. I'm the guy.
Believe it or not, this 1999 photograph of the Rhine River by German artist Andreas Gursky sold for $4.3 million.
I don't think I would have paid more than $4.2 million for it.
Not at all, actually, not even a little bit.
Larry Gagosian, who represents Andreas Gursky, is sitting 4 or 5 rows up ahead of me with a whole set of sort of art world heavyweights. And he sends a message back, who bought that? And so the guy in front of me turns around and says, Larry's asking who bought that. I said, Inigo Philbrick.
Larry created like a lifestyle of a dealer. He has a private jet, he has mansions in the city, in the Hamptons. He is surrounded by gorgeous women. He is a master of the universe, like his clients. And so that's, I think, is a very attractive proposition for young men like Inigo Philbrick.
So probably less than 2 years after Goldsmiths, I'm walking through the door in Mount Street, and there he is in charge of a really blue chip gallery. Now, this is not a shed in some other part of London. It is at the epicenter of the art world. It is the center of the universe.
The Mount Street space, it was very well known that it was Jay Jopling's new venture to deal secondary art. So that's art which has been acquired by the dealer from auction and is being resold. I was walking down Mount Street with a Belgian collector, and the Belgian collector said, okay, we must go into Jay Jopling's new gallery. You must meet Inigo. And he was very, very charming. And the first thing I thought was, you're really young to be running this lovely space on Mount Street. So either you're a young genius, or somebody here is being taken for a very, very big ride.
Jay gave me the keys to a gallery on Mount Street because he thought that he could benefit from having me run that gallery for him so that he could accomplish this thing he'd always wanted to accomplish, of having a business that made money while he slept. So all of his personal collecting, i.e. the deals that he does without his partners from White Cube, is done through a vehicle called Modern Collections.
Inigo's reputation pretty soon meant that he was actually managing some quite substantial art funds for major collectors. And so these collectors would give Inigo large sums of money and send them off to buy artworks, trusting his eye, trusting his ability. They just give him pretty much free rein.
Jay and I would have full days set up where we would go around the auction houses, we'd zip into the views. We'd go to lunch, and maybe I would have been able to find something great that was for sale privately, and he'd go in and show it to a client and come out, and we'd have made $1 million for the gallery, and I'd get $100,000 for me for having set the deal up. And those were great days. So I went, initially from earning a bus fare to being paid something like £28,000 a year, to being paid £50,000 a year, to being paid £150,000 a year, to finally earning £500,000 to £600,000 a year.
And what does that feel like?
It feels great. It feels like you've accomplished something. And it was fun.
Inigo was a young sensation. He was eager to talk to journalists, not too much, just enough. He was smart, very knowledgeable about this shady world, that is very difficult to penetrate. He knew who is consigning what kind of deals auction houses are after, what is hot on the secondary market and why.
Inigo had a stellar reputation. He had a lot of credibility. And I would constantly hear murmurs out there from colleagues and peers in the marketplace that Inigo Philbrick was going to be pretty much the next Larry Gagosian.
Let's talk about Kenny.
I'm starving again. How many times did I tell the BBC no? Is it a world record?
I would say it's
11.
Quite close to a world record, but now you just really turned up the heat on yourself.
I could care less.
Good. It's all about the show.
Mikey?
Tell us who you are and what you do and how you classify yourself, because you wear many hats.
How much time do you have? I am an artist, a writer, and a lecturer, curator, collector, dealer at times. That's me. If there's any mystery.
Take me back to the first time that you met Inigo.
I have a friend who I used to go to galleries with. Ostensibly, the idea was to take my friend to galleries and they would find artworks to collect. And I took them to this gallery called Modern Collections on Mount Street. I went into the gallery not knowing what it was, where it came from. It looked like it was just dropped from another planet. A little gallery with all of these kind of cool contemporary artists like Wade Guyton and Rudolf Stengel. When I bought a piece, I requested to say hello to the proprietor. And there was Inigo, owning a $60 million art collection when he was in his 20s. And I was like, oh, wow, that's formidable. And so began my adventure.
So Kenny showed up at a time when I had been struggling to develop collector relations. I didn't have the network I needed to sell through to sustain a gallery where I was the only salesperson. And you can't grow a sales network overnight. Kenny was interesting because he represented lots of buyers. I had the stuff, and I didn't have the place to put it, and he had the place to put it. And so I, by spending an evening with Kenny, could kind of spend an evening with 3 or 4 or 5 possible buyers. And that was really seductive to me. Very quickly, Kenny and I had a standing once-a-week dinner. If we were in New York, we'd have dinner in New York. If we were in London, we'd have dinner in London. If we were in Los Angeles, we'd have dinner in Los Angeles. And dinner was a couple of bottles of red wine, and we'd stumble out, normally with a deal or two done.
I would buy a bottle of wine according to what the label looked like, or more likely how high the alcohol was. I couldn't tell the difference between $9.99 or $9,000. I don't think Inigo could either, but he had to order wine for $5 grand.
Okay.
We had holidays, we exercised, we were competitive about how many steps you'd have, how many flights you'd climb. Just having fun, drinking, chaos. I love chaos. It was all fun things, and it was always grounded in art appreciation and discovery.
I don't make a move without it. What do you think of this new Christopher Wool painting?
We went to all the auctions together. He could ferret out a painting like a truffle pig. Nobody could A, find the works he found, nor be as conversant and as knowledgeable about the inherent value of something. Could sell the same painting 5 times to 5 different people. I couldn't sell it once. He was ambitious, he was smart, he was hungry, and he had a great work ethic, and he had a charm, and he could seduce people. He was a bit arrogant, and he believed he could do no wrong. I said to my kids, he's either Gagosian or he's going to jail. There was no in between.
Jay was terrified that I was going to leave and set up my own business. So Jay says to me, would you like to have a gallery of your own? And I said, you mean where I can make my own exhibitions? And he said, yes. And I said, amazing. That sounds fantastic. And it'd be mine? Yeah. We take down the Modern Collections lettering and put up Inigo Philbrick. So this is the moment. I should be feeling absolutely incredible. The problem that Jay and I had was Jay wanted more, and he wanted to eat the whole pie.
When he opened Inigo Philbrick on Davie Street, he told me that Jay Jopling was the guarantor of his lease. And he was always saying the most horrible things about Jay. And what did Jay Jopling ever do to him? He gave you your chance and he funded you. It was like this kind of like kill your father kind of relationship.
It was his gallery in his name, but of course it was still being underwritten by Jay Jopling. Inigo was suddenly making lots of money. He didn't want to be the little gallery boy picking up crumbs off the floor. It was a definite shift, and a shift into the kind of slippery slope that Inigo Philbrick then started to slide down.
I had a problem. How do I make it so that this name over the door that says it's mine is really mine? How do I get this business away from Jay and into my own hands? And the irony is, of course, to fix that, I would do things from which there was almost certainly no realistic return.
Inigo becomes friendly with Rob Newland, who was one of the business advisors within White Cube. Rob actually leaves White Cube, and they start to get very closely in cahoots. And Rob is a very different character to Inigo. He's not flamboyant. He is very financially savvy, very financially astute.
Rob brought with him all of these incredibly complex financial techniques and strategies. He brought these interest-driven, complex deals that were almost like futures contracts on paintings.
So by this time, what's emerged on the contemporary art world radar are these collectors buying shares in an artwork and then trading in their shares. It's the kind of callous speculation into artworks by people who really don't care about the art at all. They just care about its value.
Inigo wasn't the first person to sell shares in one artwork, but the selling of more than a whole artwork, that was pretty unique actually, in that instead of selling 2 halves or 4 quarters, he was selling 5 quarters or 6 quarters. He was selling something which didn't even exist. And then he used that co-owned work to gain collateral without the permission of the other co-owners.
For a while, he was operating legally within the normal frameworks of just the shady art world. But then he went overboard. And at that point, his operation as a secondary market dealer becomes a crime.
The things that Rob and I got up to were meant to create more real deals, but that isn't what happened. I started taking out a series of loans.
So Inigo goes to a specialist lender, and he said to them, "This is my collection, will you lend me money against it?" And they lent him many millions.
It wouldn't have been a problem if Inigo Philbrick had owned these expensive artworks, but he didn't.
And I very quickly went from the cash-driven business to a world where we were borrowing money against paintings to buy other paintings. And this was kind of putting me on steroids.
Inigo started selling the same artworks to multiple people. He was their eyes and ears and business acumen, and they really trusted him.
He sold to a wide circle of people, but there was a core group of people that were like, almost like his unwitting funders. And he kept a Chinese wall around all these people because he was trading the same material amongst us, churning it again and again. So he would sell it to A, then he would buy it back from A and sell it to B, then he would buy it back from B and sell it to C.
I think there's a certain desperation about Philbrick's scheme because it seems time limited. The art world's pretty small. And at some point, somebody's going to be sitting next to you at auction just going, that's mine. And the person next to you going, well, that's mine.
I was so phenomenally successful as a secondary market dealer that the money was literally shooting out of the ground around me. If I wanted something, I could have it. And then I meet Victoria. She is unexpected. She is elegant, yes, but also loud and rowdy and just fun.
I've been on a reality TV show called Made in Chelsea, which for anyone who doesn't know is this show which has been going on for years and years.
Merry fucking Christmas.
Inigo's never watched Made in Chelsea, thank God. He never knew me as this character from a TV show. He knew me as me.
Take us back to the first encounter with
Inigo.
Inigo Philbrick.
To be quite honest, I thought he was gay, but like, who am I to judge? He was this sort of sandy-haired, lanky-ish guy, pale-skinned, maybe a bit sunburnt even, kind of preppy, not my type in the slightest.
I'd never believed in love at first sight, but obsession from first sight you can definitely have. And it was the start of this months-long epic siege, laying waste to her reluctance.
The day that we first kissed, I just got this feeling. I was like, oh God, this is gonna be messy. I didn't know how messy. I didn't know it was gonna be this kind of messy. I think I kind of brought Inigo out of his shell slightly. So he went from being this kind of art world geek to the life and soul of the party. It was fun being this kind of art wife, you know?
He obviously spoiled her completely rotten. Victoria, was showered in love and in gifts, which is obviously very generous, and, who wouldn't like that?
I never really thought to myself, where is all of this money coming from, in a way, because it wasn't really out of the norm for me, because I've had wealthy boyfriends before in the past. You name it, shopping, boats, planes.
So Victoria and I embark on this romance, and it plays out on the social calendar of the art world. In June, we are all in Basel, Switzerland. You leave Basel and you either go to Mykonos, or you go to Ibiza, or you go to Saint-Tropez, or you go to Capri. And the same kind of thing happens in the winter. You're either in St. Moritz or you're in St. Bart's. And we did all of those things, and we did them fantastically well.
Yeah, there was a lot of excesses, like planes and big dinners and this and that. But part of art dealing is it's an art. And you've got to sell an image of success.
I met Inigo in Mayfair. And over time, I started striking up a friendship with him. This particular life that I witnessed was something where there were just no bounds. We would hang out globally. If there was something like a party, or there was somebody that he fancied going to watch, a DJ or something like that, 2 days later you'd find yourself on an airplane going somewhere.
It was just, so extreme and so much, and it was so opulent. I thought, my God, he must be the top art dealer in London right now.
He wanted the lifestyle, the girlfriend. He wanted to have the diamond in his belt, to have the custom-made shoes. A young kid in his 20s signing his name on the bill at Harry Cipriani. He wanted this life. He wanted these accoutrements, these ostentatious displays of wealth and success.
In order for him to be friends with these people, these bankers, hedge funds, financiers that we say investors, and take their money and work with them. He kind of had to be like them. He was living their lifestyle. but you are not making the same money as all your friends.
I also always wondered, how can Inigo afford all of this? So I was just wondering, where is it all coming from?
Inigo found a group of newish collectors that wanted to put real money in this game from the hedge fund community, the private equity world, and weren't as seasoned as some of the old line collectors.
When you start investing, what you want is some sort of guide. And Inigo Philbrick was one of a small amount of people who could offer you instant access. And that made him an attractive character to know, hopefully to befriend.
One day, I was in the gallery. This guy walks in off the street. He goes, "Is that a Wade Guyton?" I go, "Yep, it's a Wade Guyton." He goes, "How much is it?" I go, "It's $500,000. He goes, "Oh, okay, can you do 450?" I go, "Yeah, I can do 450. He goes, "Okay, send me an invoice," and walks out. And I'm like, sure, right, because that's not how paintings get sold. And it turns out that he's buying for Alexander Pesco, who everyone calls Sasha. He is a Serbian financier, heir to a fairly significant fortune. He's spending money like water. And so meeting Sasha was a very attractive situation. And you can tell that he's lonely. You can tell that he is looking for someone to sit with and chat. And obviously, that's what I do. I'm available. There was this invitation to come to a cruise, and I could tell that it was about meeting his dad, really. I'd find out later that there had been a wine guy, and there'd been a watch guy, and there'd been a car guy, and in each instance, things had ended very badly. And I think this was meant to be the vetting session to make sure that there wasn't going to be a similar scandal. Quite quickly, we start doing an awful lot of business, and we ran around the world doing deals. Sasha said, "Shall we split a NetJets card, which is kind of like a bus pass for private planes? We might get on a plane and fly private to Beirut to see a painting, or we might fly to Paris, which is actually inconvenient compared to taking the Eurostar, but it is fucking fun."
I think Inigo set up a gallery in Miami because there's money there, there's not perhaps quite as much taste, not quite as much connoisseurship. So Inigo could be chasing new collectors, throwing their money around.
In Miami, I had major buyers coming in and saying, "Here's my card, take my email address down, send me what you've got." I thought this was great. This is going to launch me to another level as an art dealer.
It was the biggest story of that season. It was this wunderkid guy who, was making big moves in the market. He always had amazing shows. And the art world in Miami flocked to
this very young dealer who's very successful and seems to be having a very lavish lifestyle.
We went to a nightclub in Miami, and I'd never seen anything like this. I remember that the table was paid when we arrived, something like $70,000 or $80,000 for the table.
You can almost chart the turn in his life when he just became delusional with success.
We lived a kind of hedonistic life, I guess. Did a lot of parties, after parties, after parties. Were there drugs? Yeah. Was it excessive? Yeah. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't fun.
He would go to the airport and his bag of ketamine or MDMA would be in a baggie that he would just put in his briefcase. He traveled around like as if he could do no wrong, and he was impervious to the law. He couldn't care less. He was oblivious.
Kenny tells a story about my sauntering through airports with drugs in my pocket. That wasn't me. Have I taken drugs? Have I drunk to excess? Yes, absolutely. Was I, taking ketamine in the bathroom at Christie's? Of course not. There were moments of weakness where I did phenomenally stupid things, decisions that I can't explain.
When I got into this market, after the 2008-2009 recession, I launched my own fund, which was called Duveen Capital. which we would supply dealers with financing. At auction, typically a seller will not get paid out once they have successfully sold something for 35, 60, 90 days, sometimes longer. And we would give the seller money the same day of sale, if not the day after. When I first met Inigo, I was ecstatic. I landed this as one of my accounts, and it's this young wheeler dealer who's buying and selling on a daily basis multi-million-dollar paintings. Anybody would want that client. First and only deal we did together, he was selling a sculpture called The Map of China by the artist Ai Weiwei. The estimate was $800 to $1.2 million. I would pay Inigo the hammer price on the lot the day after the sale, and then I would be repaid by the buyer. And the work ended up selling for about $2.1 million. At the time, it's like, wow, this is quite out of that value band. We just figured that this was part of the upswing. But then there was no payment by the supposed buyer. It became very clear that this work was directly bid up by a controlling entity or a highly influenced entity with great connections to Philbrick.
So the more he secretly bid up the work, the more you would have to pay out to.
Yes. Inigo goes radio silent like a ghost. He blocked my phone calls, would not respond to email. I run into him at a subsequent evening sale in the elevator. He catches eyes with me and immediately puts his head down, stands in the corner. He runs out of the elevator as soon as this opens up at Sotheby's, sprints across the corporate lobby, flies through the spinning door, runs straight across the street, and I remember this vividly, almost gets hit by a car, and that was the last time I saw Inigo. After this experience, our funds stopped working in the art market. Personally and emotionally, I felt deceived, and I was just kind of left in shock that the market could let this happen.
I was, for a whole host of reasons, trying to get into a world of more expensive paintings because the gains looked fantastic.
Contemporary art is like a pyramid, right? Like a wealth pyramid. And for a certain period of time, Rudolf Stingel's market was almost at the top of this pyramid. We know that Rudolf Stingel is important because his works sell for $1 million at auction. You know, they all want a Stingel. It's a trophy.
I bought this Rudolf Stingel portrait of Pablo Picasso. And it was the largest photorealist paintings he's ever made. And it is just an unbelievably affecting, romantic, poetic image. It's a great painting. Also, this was a really well-timed opportunity.
Philbrick was pretty deep in the Stingel market. He knew it well. He had access to a lot of works, and he bet correctly that market was going to rise. He sourced Rudolf Stingel, and as he had in the past, he offered that opportunity to Mr. Pesco to buy an interest, 50% interest in the piece. He would retain the other half. Unbeknownst to Mr. Pesco, Philbrick purported to sell another interest to Fine Art Partners, a German-based investment group, and ultimately then pledged that work as collateral on a loan that he took out for his personal benefit from Guzzini, an entity owned by the Reuben brothers, second richest family in England. And so very quickly, you had a number of different parties having an interest in the same work without knowing that the others were involved.
What does that tell us?
Yeah, it tells us he wasn't interested in the art or the artist, he was interested in the money and the lifestyle. And he used his knowledge and his experience to finance that lifestyle.
So by now, Inigo's whole operation is based on selling and then secretly reselling shares in works by a few key artists like Christopher Wohl and Rudolf Stingel. What makes it so utterly hideous for Inigo Philbrick is that their market isn't booming, it's on the wane.
He was a scholar of the art market of a small group of artists. And then when the market shifted, when the white male artists started to take second seat to artists of color and women artists, he didn't shift. He stayed with these sinking ships. He could have easily shifted to the most, sought after work and done extraordinarily well, but he just got caught up his own ass.
The market started to go out for the group of artists that he was dealing with. And I always like to say, when the tide goes out, you start to see who's swimming naked.
I get the call from FAP, from the Germans, about selling the Stengel Picasso. I'm with my other co-owner. I'm in St. Bart's on the beach with Sasha Pesco. So that was terrifying. Legally, I've completely over my skis. I've sold more shares of the painting than can possibly exist. I thought, oh my God, if anyone finds out about this, I'm gonna get in trouble. And that forced my hand in a way that I'd never been forced before. I determined that the best way to make people as whole as I could is to put it into auction. And I needed help getting the Germans to buy into this.
He communicated to his investors in Germany that Christie's is offering us a guarantee of $9 million. It's like insurance. That no matter what happens at auction in real time, you're gonna be made whole, you're gonna be paid. So it's May 2019, and the big auction season in New York rolls around. And that's where, you really test the market, the water, the temperature, do or die.
Going into the auction was terrifying. This was just money. This didn't matter about the quality of the paintings. This mattered about people who wanted their payments, and they wanted them now.
Good evening, everybody. It's an incredibly full sale room, and welcome to everybody joining us online, on Facebook, YouTube, Christie's.com. Welcome all over the world. It's going to be an exciting night. Thank you so much for joining us.
Inigo's plan relies on there being an appetite for people spending big on the Stengel. But what he hasn't factored in is the work that comes before it. The big, shiny Koons bunny.
Tonight, I have the pleasure of selling the Koons Rabbit, an icon of 20th century sculpture, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to open the bidding here at $40 million. At $40 million, $42 million. At $42 million, 45 is bid. At $45 million. At $45 million, $48 million. $50 million, $55 million is bid. $57 million. Which would you like? 60. $60 million is bid. At 65. At $68 million now. $68 million is the bid from Sin Lee. 70 is the bid. 72 million. 78 is the bid. 80. 80 million. Give me a signal, or I'm selling it. Is it a no? It's a no. You have it, sir. $80 million.
A new auction record for a living artist. Yay!
Lot number 33 is the Stengel of Picasso, 2012. Here he is.
The fact that the Stengel came after the Koons and the layout is significant, because if you have a work of art that made a huge price, you don't put straight after it another work of art that's going to make another huge price. You have something which actually you're nervous about, and you want to sort of almost move quickly past it.
So I'm sitting in my seat at Christie's, and we get to the Stengel Picasso, and I am shaking like a leaf.
Wonderful picture of 2012, and we start the bidding at $4 million. For the Picasso.
You know, inevitably, the air will have been somewhat sucked out of the room. But, you know, everyone's kind of still in a heap of excitement and sort of almost post-coital feeling in the auction house. And the auctioneer can, you know, barely pick up the old gavel and pick it all up again. And such is the excitement. Of course, he's thinking of his bonus, I'm sure. You know, the auction house, and everyone's rubbing their hands in glee. But no one's really got the energy anymore. It's all gone on the Koons.
At $4 million too. $4 4,200,000.
He tries to generate excitement. Let's do 4.2, 4.4.
At 4,500,000, not yours here. 4,800,000, not yours, Barrett.
And nobody's bidding.
At 4,800,000, looking for 5.
Finally, one person, he's on the podium when he, places a bid.
5 million with Adrien. At $5 million. You coming in, sir? Not this one.
And then there's a pause, and UC is like, fishing for another number, and then, oh, over there, another number appears somewhere in the room. Oh, yes, gentlemen, okay.
At 5 million then, 5,500,000, new place. At 5,500,000, give me 6. For the Picasso. At 5,500,000, the gentleman's bid, I have it. At 5,500,000, 6 will be next, Adrien. Would you like it? 5,500,000, in the sale room, and selling. At 5,500,000. Sure? At 5,500 then. Yours it is.
I feel terrified because I know that the Germans are watching online, and I know that as soon as the auction hammer comes down, my phone will be ringing.
At 5,500,000. Yours. At 5,500,000.
Did I know that irrevocably my life had changed? Yes, absolutely. I, from that very moment, was damned.
Daniel Temple and his wife were following the sale remotely that night. So after the Rudolf Stingel bombed, Inigo was walking out of the sale room where he sent them a WhatsApp message. Strange sale. They got out of the guarantee low. You don't get out of a guarantee. That's what a guarantee is for.
He came back from the auction, back to the hotel, and he was just not okay. He was pacing around furiously. I remember I was just saying to him, "Are you okay? Are you okay?"
That conversation kind of began and ended with, I'm really stressed, things are bad, I'm scared.
After the sale, the Germans are like, "Hey, Inigo, where's our money?" And Inigo's like, "Oh, Christie's only got a little bit of it. Let me wire you, a couple of $1 million."
I assured FAP that, don't worry, the money's coming through. We said we had a $9 million guarantee. We'll get the $9 million, don't worry. And they said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, it's gonna be fine." And that worked for 3 or 4 weeks.
You see Inigo twisting and turning reality and telling them, "Don't worry, I got you. Wait a minute, I have to pay someone else." Dragging it out and out and out, buying some time.
At the end of 3 or 4 weeks, they asked me, "Can we get a copy of the auction guarantee?" And I said, "Sure." And I called someone in my office and said, "Can you make me a document that looks like this?"
And he shows them a document where Christie's agrees to pay $9 million. It's all in black and white on paper. A couple of months later, there's still no money. And that's when they go to Christie's and say, "What the hell is going on? We were promised this guarantee of $9 million. And Christie says, "What guarantee?" And they send the piece of paper that Inigo provided to them. And Christie's comes back and says, "This is not a guarantee document. This is not our signatures. This is a fraud. This is fraudulent document." Holy shit.
Inigo came here to my house looking a little bit more fidgety than I had ever seen him before. And he told me that the shit was gonna hit the fan. He wasn't forthright in his business dealings, and he was running scared. And I had never seen fear in him. So I said to him, like, "How much? What are we talking about?" When he told me, I was flabbergasted. And I was like, "Okay."
A friend of mine had called me and said, just so you know, my lawyer just showed me this. There was a civil lawsuit that had been filed against me. I was like, oh my God, I'm getting sued.
How did you cope?
Terribly.
There was a point in Miami where I was worried for his well-being. I thought, God, is he just gonna jump off the side of the fucking balcony?
Well, the Inigo I met at the beginning was a very nice, mild-mannered, relaxed person who just enjoyed life and enjoyed his friends around him. The person I saw at the very end was a mixture of a guy who had a point to prove and somebody who had, in hindsight, limited time left to enjoy himself. He knew the writing was on the wall.
October the 19th, we were in Miami, and just for a change of scenery and something to get his mind off things, I was like, let's go and see the Batman movie, The Joker. So off we went to like some strip mall.
And I come out of The Joker, and I can't imagine that, you know, what feels like my whole life over and everything I've worked for in ruins. I'm not welcome at work because there's not a seat for me at the table. So I'm supposed to just walk up and down South Beach waiting to see what happens? That seems like a kind of prison sentence.
Then he said to me, if I had to go somewhere, would you come with me? And I was like, of course, where are we going? We woke up the next day, and I just remember the sound of the suitcase like slamming on the floor and him throwing things in, and I'm like, what are you doing? And within half an hour, we were on our way to the airport.
And then from one day to the next, poof, he disappeared like Harry Houdini.
I couldn't even keep up with the lawsuits. They were just coming fast and furious. $86 million that's missing.
Our immediate reaction was, how do we get him back to the US so he can face these charges?
The whole art world was whispering about, like, what the hell's going on? Where the hell is he?
He's gone. Inigo is nowhere to be found, and he's left this trail of destruction in his wake.
I will never forget being on the plane, about to take off, and they were coming around with the menus. They handed Inigo the menu, and he actually thought that he was being served papers. And the look on his face was just, after he realized it's just a menu, he was like, oh, God, okay, it's fine. It was almost like we could laugh about it. You know, it was a sigh of relief. But also we were in the skies, so that was a relief too.
Did he tell you that he'd broken the laws, that he'd done, you know, about all of these?
Everyone breaks the law occasionally, you know? He told me what had happened, but it wasn't really making that much sense to me. It's like listening to someone who's got a sports injury about how they can't really play in, like, the next season of tennis. Once we left America, he switched his phone off and never switched it back on.
$40 million, $42 million.
The world auction record.
The highest grossing auction of all time.
Inigo was a great storyteller. To become a good art dealer, it's about telling a story.
Money was literally shooting out of the ground around me.
It was so extreme and so opulent. I thought, my God, he must be the top art dealer in London right now.
The clubs, the drugs, the booze, the planes, the suits, it became about that. He just became delusional with success.
I'd never believed in love at first sight, but obsession from first sight you can definitely have.
I just got this feeling, I was like, oh God, this is gonna be messy. I didn't know how messy.
I was just wondering, how can Inigo afford all of this? Where is it all coming from?
You could sell the same painting 5 times to 5 different people.
I thought, oh my God, if anyone finds out about this, I'm going to get in trouble.
He knew it wasn't going to last. He knew the writing was on the wall.
He became something else, a monster.
It just crumbles, like the house of cards just crumbled.
His whole life and career was built on lies.
Wealthy people, they're rich for a reason. They don't like losing money.
This is the largest art-based fraud in U.S. history.
The official number is 86 million, but it could be much bigger.
From one day to the next, poof.
If the U.S. government is willing to travel halfway around the world, you know you're in serious trouble.
The judge asked me why I did it. So I say, for the money, Your Honor.
My friend called me, who worked at the gallery, and she told me that she was served the papers. The guy had waited to serve the papers apparently for days, so he kind of threw them at the gallery. I tried to contact Inigo. His phone was disconnected. So I reached out to the logistics guy, and it bounced back to me immediately saying, no longer works for Inigo Philbrick. And I was like, holy shit.
The guy just disappeared. So, I mean, I tried obviously to reach him. He's not responding. His lawyers are not responding. He's just vanished. And everybody was talking about, where is Inigo Philbrick?
We get to Australia and they have the bushfires, which is just crazy. There's wind blowing and fires were out of control. And we couldn't actually leave the airport, leave the state, because the fires were so bad. So it was okay, what do we do? So that's when we were okay, let's see if we could go to Fiji. There were no flights to Fiji. Okay, where can we go? And then there's Vanuatu, a flight in an hour and a half. That's where we jumped on the plane and went to Vanuatu with no idea of what to expect.
Thank you for calling. Our offices are now closed.
Inigo is nowhere to be found. He's vanished. There's nobody at the Miami Gallery. People are telling me that it's closed and it's empty. Art has been stripped off the walls. There's garbage on the floor, and he's gone. After the Fine Art Partners lawsuit against Inigo hit, and the first story dropped, then it really opened the floodgates. People contacting me to tell me about claims that they had. Geographic range of the claims was vast. We were hearing from investors in Belgium, Singapore, Berlin, of course, and all around the US, a lot in New York. There was just a stream of claims and stories about being swindled. The detail was incredible. What they were alleging about what Inigo did on these various deals. I know the word bombshell gets thrown around, but it really was a bombshell.
The lawsuits kind of brought all of this into the public eye, which was, I mean, absolutely fascinating. There were a lot of documents that were suddenly available. Consignment agreements, private emails. This information is very tightly guarded in the art market because it's a pretty opaque space.
And the biggest twist in the whole story, as everybody's fighting each other and filing cross claims and lawsuits, is that Inigo is nowhere to be found, and he's left this trail of destruction in his wake.
So we arrived on this island on the other side of the world. And then it suddenly did feel like, God, we're so far away. It did feel like we'd run away. It was not as I'd imagined it. It was just a million miles away from anything that I'd ever seen or experienced in my life.
Victoria is ultra aware of class and status and what's luxury and what isn't. And that first hotel we stayed in was as bad a package holiday experience as you could possibly hope to have.
With the abattoir lighting and the sound of mosquitoes, I did have moments where I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is so not my life. But then it was also like, okay, I guess it was the beginning of the end of the adventure, but then it was the beginning of a new adventure.
When I first caught wind of this story about Inigo, it immediately grabbed my interest. You know, the idea of an alleged dark fraudster on the run and some people disappearing and all these big sums of money. So I was kind of hooked immediately. As a reporter, the first thing you try and do is say, well, okay, where is this guy? Where's he disappeared to? So I started by visiting Inigo's former gallery, which is on Mount Street. The gallery was shut. I tried to track him down to his Miami space. So I ended up kind of calling up someone locally and saying, you know, can you go and check if anyone's there? And I think they said that when he left, the only thing he left was the food in the fridge. So then I started tracking down some of his ex-colleagues and saying, oh, you know, hi, I'm a reporter. Rich people tend not to like journalists sticking around in their interests. The rare time that they do is when they feel like they've got a grievance. You know, if they feel like they've been defrauded a lot of money, all of a sudden people are willing to tell you about that. I remember there was a great former colleague of his who described it as having eyes like a shark, that it was like dealing with a hedge fund manager rather than an art dealer. That this guy was about money and making deals, and he was tremendously good at it. But a lot of people started answering the door on the premise that they wanted the gossip. They wanted to know, okay, well, where is he? Do you know where he is?
The art world loves gossip, and it would be all over Instagram, you know, where people would saying that they spotted him. I heard he was in Japan, and I heard he was in Australia, and I heard he was in New Caledonia, and people said that Victoria had a house in the Bahamas and that he was hiding out there and that it was scaring her family. I mean, I heard all range of possible locations. And this was not good for anyone Inigo had done business with. When I approached Jay Jopling to ask him, did he want to share anything about Inigo, he did say a couple of things about how saddened and shocked he was that, you know, things turned out the way they did. He had hired Inigo and thought he was like this, you know, very bright, promising young man. But he also said that he couldn't speak very much because he had also initiated his own high court proceedings to try to get some assets back. So then I looked into all the details about the lawsuit, and I saw the name of this offshore account, Ogini. Ogini Limited was, in fact, Jay Jopling, something he had set up to back Inigo with the not-so-concealed name of Inigo backwards. The lawsuits just continued mounting. I couldn't even keep up with the lawsuits. They were just coming fast and furious.
Once we kind of got into the swing of living supposedly on the run, it was not so bad after all. Neither of us had driving licenses. So we conned our way into getting a license. It was a very clean, healthy way of living, especially in comparison to how we'd lived at moments before.
We were playing tennis, we were swimming. We adopted a dog, Bacchus.
He was not this person who was anxiously pacing around on the phone all the time. It was a completely different Inigo. He was carefree, he was at peace. It was like he was at peace, he wasn't having to worry anymore.
I must have been a different person to not have the stress and anxiety that I'd been living under. I was relaxed in a way that I hadn't been in a long time, which isn't to say I didn't think there'd be repercussions, which isn't to say I thought I'd gotten away with something. At the same time, not only had my life stopped, the whole world was in this strange bubble.
Millions of people on lockdown around the world. Borders closed from Eastern Europe to America's West Coast.
The whole art world and the world goes into lockdown. It was a strange ending to this boom period, which started with the global financial crash and Philbrick's becoming an art dealer, and ends with COVID. And then Philbrick doing a runner.
During COVID, the height of COVID, everything looks great. We were on an island in a country which had absolutely nothing coming in and out. No one could chase them even if they wanted to. And Inigo was happy. The only person who was really questioning where Inigo was, the person stirring the pot, trying to get a headline, was Kenny Schachter.
Oh, stop.
There was a time that I had gone to New York and I had shared with Kenny what felt like really personal things, and they affected me much more than they affected him. And he had told me, "You're like a son to me, I love you," and then went and written an article about me. I'm the disgraced art dealer, I'm the mini Madoff. Mini Madoff really irritates the tits off me.
I would never have written this article in New York Magazine, never would have even gone on record complaining about him, had it not been the fact that he took a chunk of money from some very close personal friends of mine that I was kind of tangentially responsible for making the introduction. I was pissed off. I was hurt.
It's interesting when you read his New York Magazine piece. One of the first paragraphs, he says, "I'll admit I made a lot of money with Inigo Philbrick." And Kenny made a lot of money from his relationship with me.
I told the truth. And everything I wrote in my story called The Mini Madoff, that was my lived experience. There was no speculation. I wasn't hyperbolizing, retelling. I wasn't doing anything other than recounting what happened.
I was trying to kind of get a narrative of what actually happened. Every time you got into another artwork, it would turn out that there was just this web of lies. After the Stingle, Sasha Pesco then realized, oh, I have another deal with him, a multi-million-dollar Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Alexander Sasha Pesco is an avid art collector. Mr. Pesco looked to Mr. Philbrick, as any collector looks to his art advisor, for advice and counsel and opportunities. Summer of 2016, Mr. Philbrick proposes an opportunity to Mr. Pesco to invest in a work by Jean-Michel Basquiat titled Humidity. The Basquiat was a tremendous opportunity, not only because of the value, but also the prestige of owning a work by this great artist. Very few people in the world can say that they own a Basquiat. Turns out, as with a lot of the other opportunities, it was all part of a massive fraud. Philbrick had sold Mr. Pesco on a number of lies relating to that deal. Philbrick told Mr. Pesco that he could acquire the work for $18.4 million. And as with prior deals, Mr. Pesco would put up half of the purchase price. But we knew Philbrick wasn't buying it for $18.4 million. He was actually getting it in a private sale from Phillips for $12.5 million. To sell that lie, Philbrick forged documents. To create the appearance of legitimacy, he made up a contract. He even put into that contract the bank account information of a well-known New York law firm that works in the art space. They'll tell you they had nothing to do with that deal, knew nothing about this. It was all the product of this massive fraud.
I continued to write about Inigo, and then all of a sudden, I got a DM from Steve Irwin. I got these DMs saying, don't be so hard, he's just a young guy, he made some mistakes, he lost his path, but he meant well, he never intended to do any wrong. I remember screaming to my wife, it's him, it's him.
I was reading Kenny's madcap narrative of my contacting him under fake names, which I wasn't doing. Steve Irwin Pets, but that wasn't the only one. There was a whole series of pseudonyms that I supposedly used.
Were any of those pseudonyms you?
No.
Did you have any social media interaction and chat contact with Ken?
No. I had nothing to say to Kenny.
Later that night, my phone rang at 2 o'clock in the morning when I was fast asleep, and it was one of my kids, and he said, I think I found Inigo.
So how did your son find him?
He had a friend who has a friend, and they told me that he was going to the South Pacific. So when I was writing about Inigo, I illustrated it with my own art. I made a wanted poster from the FBI, Wanted Dead or Alive, The Return of Inigo Philbrick. I made this and sent it to him and said, send me my fucking money or I'm gonna put this in ArtNet. I wasn't really letting go because I was aggrieved.
Kenny Schachter started posting on Instagram that he had heard from Inigo. And he started posting these pictures of these conversations with these kind of burner accounts, claiming to know where he was. And he kind of turned it into this weird performance art piece, where every day he had a hashtag and he would put up these pictures saying, oh, you know, I know where Inigo is, and chastising this mystery person. Why would an alleged art fraudster on the run be potentially jeopardizing his location in the world to you know, anyone trying to find him? It struck me as an incredibly unrealistic, and if it was real, it was incredibly stupid. And if it wasn't real, then like what was really going on? Who was behind these mysterious accounts? It became very clear that I essentially couldn't trust anyone. All of a sudden, I start getting these messages out of the blue from these strange Instagram accounts, essentially giving me gossip about Inigo. They seemed incredibly aggrieved, talking about additional victims, the Saudis, and like danger. And Inigo fled because he was in danger. He screwed the wrong people. Philbrick is scared, the mystery person wrote. Philbrick is obviously connected to Saudis. They the most desperate to get big pieces right away. So I'm like, first of all, who is this person? How do they know that they've angered the Saudis? What Saudis?
As a journalist, like as a reporter on this beat, like there's tons of pressure to just find out who are the people behind all these LLCs and entities who Inigo defrauded. Inigo bought this infinity pumpkin installation by Kusama as an investment for FAB, the German investors, the same people who bought the Picasso portrait by Rudolf Stingel. One of the most famous artists in the world right now is this reclusive Japanese 80-year-old, Yayoi Kusama. One of Kusama's best-known and most coveted installations, artworks, are these infinity rooms. You stand in this infinite space, surrounded by reflections of either lights or pumpkins. You could see your own reflection in this strange, kind of magical, hypnotic universe. And people love it. People wait for hours to get into those rooms. It's a huge, like, blockbuster, like, crowd pleaser installation. It was lent for the exhibition at the museum in Miami, Institute of Contemporary Art. You go into the gallery, and on the wall there is text, and it says the artist's name, the work's name, and then small print on the bottom, it says the work is courtesy Inigo Philbrick and the Royal Commission for Al Ula, which is a cultural arm of the Saudi government. How does the Royal Commission for Al Ula own the same work that is owned by the German investors? It's the same work. As crazy as it sounds, Inigo must have sold the work, unbeknownst to the German investors, to the Saudis.
One of, I think, the great enigmas of all this is how did Inigo think that he could sell an artwork to FAP and simultaneously, or later, sell it to the Saudi royal family? The reason I end up selling the Pumpkin Room to the Saudi people who actually lend it to the show in Miami is because I was under the impression that I could buy another one. Right? So I thought I'd found a deal, kind of like perpetual motion, kind of like a gold mine, where the Germans and I owned this thing, and I could sell it for a really meaningful profit, keep that money, pocket it, use that money to buy the second one, and the Germans and I still are right where we started.
Did the Germans say you sold it to the Saudis?
No.
Philbrick essentially was taking out a home mortgage on somebody else's home, right? You can't do that. But he found it a very easy and convenient way to raise capital in the hopes that the next investment, the next sale, would help him pay off prior debts that he owed. And the reality was he was getting away with his fraud because he was having so much success selling these works at a great profit.
One of Philbrick's many mistakes was to cross the path of one of the few police forces in the world who had the expertise to start looking into this.
It was really evident that this was something that we had to look deeper into. A lot of people were purporting to have lost millions of dollars. So quickly, our investigation took a very deep dive. It went from reviewing hundreds of thousands of documents to speaking to dozens of witnesses, victims, different persons in the industry to really figure out what was going on here with Mr. Philbrick. I think what was most surprising about this investigation was the complexity of the fraud. In a typical fraud scheme, I was expecting to see the same activity occurring with each and every problematic artwork, but Mr. Philbrick had fixed it in a way where he knew how to keep the trust in those clients. Like, he had a tailored point of view for the purpose of keeping their money and keeping their artwork while he was conducting other business activities related to the scheme with other clients.
So in the spring of 2020, Mr. Philbrick was charged in the Southern District of New York on charges of wire fraud and identity theft, and it was our job to figure out where he was. There was information that he was in Europe. We had information that he may have been in Australia.
Eventually, we were able to figure out that Mr. Philbrick was located in Vanuatu.
Vanuatu was in a complete lockdown with nobody in or out.
Our immediate reaction was, in the height of COVID, what are our next steps? How do we get him back to the US so he can face these charges?
So I kept on looking into their story, and every day there was just like more and more questions piling up. And all of a sudden I start getting these really weird messages. Whoever can get to his GF/X has got the key. If you want the truth, you've got to talk to the girlfriend.
Inigo told me, don't speak to any press. And I was thinking, oh, it's really irritating because my name was being dragged through the mud in every article coming out about Inigo.
I tried to contact Victoria through the traditional means, you know, contacting her publicist, and the way I actually got through to her was an Instagram DM. At first, she didn't want to talk, which is understandable. But as I started getting closer to the story and talking to different characters and talking to people like Kenny Schachter, then Victoria started to talk.
I wrote back and forth to him, kind of behind Inigo's back.
Well, the first thing I asked Victoria was, do you know where Inigo is? And she said, of course not.
I just told him we weren't together anymore.
She told me that they had gone to Australia, but then they'd split up and gone their separate ways, and that she didn't know where he was.
I did lie to him and say to him I wasn't with Inigo, because I thought if I could create a distance between myself and Inigo in his eyes, that I'd be able to get more out of him. And he was someone who I thought maybe is going to write a story which is a bit more balanced than what Kenny had put out.
What I didn't mention to Victoria, there were all these rumors swirling around that the feds are going to catch him.
Vanuatu is full of these little Chinese shops, they call them, and they are shops that just sell odds and ends. The shop we were in was meant to have a really good green tea cheesecake. That's what we were looking for. We'd heard about a great green tea cheesecake.
We came in here, we were just like pottering around. His face just went white. Like when I say white, it went white. And they were all standing there in, it looked like, from what I remember, it was like bulletproof vests. They said, are you Inigo Philbrick? And he said, yes. And then suddenly more men came in with bulletproof vests on. They're like, you're coming with us. And I was like, I'm coming with him, I'm coming with him. They go, fine, you get into another car. So he's marched out into one car. I'm put into another car behind him. And I said, where are we going? One of the men goes, we're going to the airport. The two cars pull in here. I was held back by two guys in the car, and they didn't let me have access to either of the phones I had. And then he was marched over here, and they wouldn't let me out of the car, and at some point, I just snapped. I said, get off me, I'm 6 months pregnant. And they suddenly were taken aback by me being pregnant. It was just awful. It was so bad. I got out of the car, and I ran towards this gate. He was being marched with his hands behind his back onto this plane that was sitting there. I had no idea where he was going. I didn't know if these people were just wearing costume. I thought it was like an abduction. I thought, fuck, like, who has he got into bed with that he shouldn't have done? I didn't know who had sent this plane, whether it was Russians, whether it was Saudis, mafia, like, I had no idea. He was just gone. I just thought, remember this tail number, remember the tail number. If I can remember the tail number, I can find out where they're taking him. I found out who the owner of the plane was a Russian chess player. I managed to get hold of him, and I said, your plane is abducted. My fiance, where is it going? Where is it going? And he said, I leased my plane out to the American government.
So it's only when I see the U.S. Marshal type people that I realize that it's a government extradition and not some, crazy revenge scheme.
Were you scared?
No, no, knowing what I know today, I should have been scared.
If the U.S. government is willing to travel halfway around the world to the South Pacific at a time when no planes are allowed in or out of the country and land a plane there to get you, you know you're in serious trouble.
On the day that the arrest was made, I remember I was sent this article within minutes of it going live. And I mean, I was shocked. Arrested in his bathing suit, no less. It was just such a far cry from the person that I met, this refined, polite, well-dressed, detail-oriented, laser-focused human being.
I think I was at my desk at Goldsmiths when I saw a kind of flash news that I clicked through. Selfishly, my first thought was, oh gosh, I hope they don't talk about Goldsmiths in this, because that's really not what we do.
In German, we have this great word, Schadenfreude. It means being happy for someone else's misery, which nails this on the head, I think, because this story was the biggest gossip of the year. These two, obviously, you see this glitzy glamour it couple, both beautiful, wealthy, incredibly well-dressed, great hair. And obviously, you wish them nothing but misery. And you don't want them to be happy and wealthy and, flying around the world. You want the opposite.
The moment Inigo was arrested, I was panicking about lawyers, searching high and low. I spoke to this guy, Peter Brill, and I thought, okay, he seems like he'll do. And so we sent him a retainer.
We get this panicked call from Victoria. It was obviously a well-educated or upper-class British accent, someone who I obviously not knowing anything about British reality TV, didn't know anything about her, and she is talking about how her fiancé boyfriend was essentially kidnapped, thrown on a plane without due process, and leaving out what else was going on in their lives.
I'm desperate to get some answers. How serious is this? What's going on? What's the timeline? They're going to take you on some crazy journey across the country to get you to New York. And this is probably going to take at least a month. And I'm like, it's going to take a what? So I land in Guam, and I get to the prison. I think I sit in Guam until the Friday. And then I fly to Honolulu. and I sit in a prison in Honolulu, waiting, and then we get a flight from Honolulu to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, we go to Las Vegas. None of it is pleasant. Landing at these weird airstrips and people getting on and people getting off and everyone's shackled and you're shackled to the person next to you and now you're shackled to the guy on the other side of you. And I've only been to Vegas once before. We'd flown private with a couple of DJ friends and their hangers-on to go from a party in Miami to a party in Vegas. And the plane taxis into the little private air hangar, and I realize it's the same air hangar that we'd landed at when I flew in from Miami with Victoria.
When I was writing about all of this, I made the following video of Inigo getting escorted off a rather large private plane. I'm holding up a sign in a chauffeur's uniform. Inigo, I don't think he'll find it terribly amusing.
So I finally land in Brooklyn, and I had a really rough arrival to Brooklyn because I was on a bus load of people that tested positive for COVID. And so we got left out on the bus for 6 or 7 hours while they decided what to do with us. You know, guys are pissing on the floor of the bus, and we haven't eaten, and there's no water. It was just really grim. I get to the prison, and that's the first moment where I'm like, wow, I'm about to go somewhere I've never imagined. And they throw us into solitary confinement for 3 weeks. No phone, no anything. I had absolutely no idea what was going on, so that was terrifying.
This is a high-profile case with a high-profile defendant. What we wanted to do was work on bail. Wasn't going to be able to get bail until he actually saw a judge in New York. It was a significant amount of work, and it was very slow going. We're in a situation now where Victoria is not getting the immediate result that she wants. She wants her boyfriend out of jail immediately.
It was just a mess, and at that point, I realized that Peter Brill was not going to be the answer. I just think he didn't really know what he was doing.
Wealthy people are demanding. Famous people are even more demanding. I think Victoria wanted immediate results, and when she didn't get immediate results, she hired a lawyer who had more news coverage, really. That's really what it amounted to.
The only reason I'm doing this, there's only one reason, is that Inigo asked me to. When do you think this will be finished? I'm Jeffrey Lichtman, L-I-C-H-T-M-A-N. I'm a criminal defense lawyer in New York City for 33 years. I represented John Gotti Jr., I represented El Chapo Guzman, I represented Chapo's wife, Emma, and I represent all 4 of his children, the Chapitos. I represented CEOs of banks, doctors, lawyers, judges.
Are you satisfied with the work that has been done?
Never satisfied with anything. Never.
Jeff Lichtman, he's this kind of swaggering New York radio host of a lawyer. Jeff came swaggering into my life on a phone call. I'm your lawyer now, and we're gonna get this sorted out. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me. And I'm like, okay, I like this guy. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me either. Let's go.
I expected to dislike him because the little that I could tell from him, he was a rich guy accused of stealing from innocent people. There was an arrogance about him, certainly, that was described in the media. His name is even pompous. Let's be honest. So I expected him to be all that, and he wasn't. I've had much bigger fraud cases, but just the sheer brassiness of the fraud that Inigo did at such a young age, I thought it was interesting. And I thought that this would be somebody that I would like to try to dig out of a very deep hole that he had dug himself. He was very grown up about his circumstances. The MDC is one of the worst prisons in the country. It's ridiculously bad conditions. I've represented mafia killers. I've represented bosses of families that have gotten to the MDC, where Inigo was for years, and complained from day one. And Inigo, who's used to flying in private planes and limousines, never complained. Every other client that I had there complained nonstop.
So, I'm outside the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, overlooking this construction site, where Inigo said he could see me because he was somewhere around here.
In prison, you either sink or you swim. You either follow the rules and figure out how to exist, how to live, or they will separate you from the herd and put you in a place that is even more restrictive. I was so lost because this was a world where I had no fluency and I had no experience that necessarily mattered. And I don't know how I fit in and how I'm supposed to survive in this environment. Being in prison, so often you would see the exact same kind of person you see in the art world. I'd be like, wow, he reminds me of the heir to this great French fortune, or whatever it might be. And, you know, this is a guy who's selling mackerel sachets 3 for $1.
So, I've just got an email from Inigo saying that his visits have been banned for 90 days because when I was leaving, we kissed, and obviously due to COVID, it's against the rules. But I guess it was worth it.
From the very beginning, once I got through the evidence and saw how strong the case was, I felt that I was in trouble. With Inigo, they had emails, they had documents that showed that he had sold paintings to multiple people. There was really no defense to it.
This was a very complicated scheme, if not the most complicated scheme that I've been investigating.
It was confirmed that a lot of people had lost millions of dollars in trusting Mr. Philbrick with their investments.
They were finding more fraud. They were finding, more money that was stolen. It was a very simple Ponzi scheme. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul. This guy wanted his money back, well, he would take it from somebody else, and that's what it was. The case became an $86 million fraud case.
The $86 million loss amount was calculated through looking through bank records and wire transfers and speaking to victims and other entities who were in contact with Mr. Philbrick.
The statutory maximum in this case was probably, 80 years or so. So I felt that we had to, from the start, do things that would enable us to get a lower sentence. I felt that we had to plead guilty in the case.
Judge Sidney Stein asked me why I did it. And I'm about to answer the question, and Jeff Lichman reaches for a piece of paper and writes on the table quickly, "For the money." It feels like a kind of, on the one hand, glib, and on the other hand, quite reductive answer to me, but this is my lawyer, and he's very celebrated, and he must know what we're doing. So I say, "For the money, Your Honor." And that becomes the token of why I did all this.
We all in the gallery were equally as taken aback by the judge, who commented something along the lines of, is that it? Do you have anything else to say? Even there, having had all that time to reflect on what he'd done, that was the best he could come up with.
Jeff Lichman tells me, "Don't worry, everything's gonna be great, it's gonna be fine, I'm gonna come and see you." Jeff Lichman doesn't come and see me. Jeff Lichman finally comes to see me the day before sentencing, as in the day before sentencing. He had told me that first-time non-violent offenders always get a reduction on the guideline range, and that it worked in my favor that my victims were not vulnerable people. By the time sentencing came around, I'd been locked up since June of 2020. All of the predictions that I'd received at that point were that I was probably looking at maybe time served, maybe another 6 months, maybe another 9 months.
I vividly remember it was extremely hot in New York. And I remember approaching the building and thinking, wow, this building is really, really, really... It's got a very imposing and sort of scary feel to it.
So I'm just on the way to the final of Inigo's court date where we're going to find out what happens to him. And I'm hoping that it's all going to go well. But I'm terrified. Like, this is the second most important day of my life. So let's see what happens.
Victoria was very, as you can imagine, she was very excited. This was her, this was her close-up, so it was a big deal for her. And I gently reminded her that nobody in this entire hemisphere knew who she was. That this is not, shockingly, this was not about her.
I was told about the sentencing, and I rolled into the courthouse in the middle of the proceedings. There was a room full of his hardcore supporters. One side of the pew was Inigo's people, the other side were journalists. And at one point, Victoria got up to go to the bathroom, and she sneered at me in such an unsettling, horrifying way. She scared me to the point that when the judge said, we'll take a break, I went running to the journalist side. I was scared that Victoria was going to lunge at me or something.
I remember sitting in the courtroom, and they brought him in, and he was in shackles and a brown jumpsuit, incredibly pale, almost unrecognizable, very sick, almost, jaundice.
Inigo's paraded out, flanked by two of these air marshals. It's almost as though they're like walking Hannibal Lecter.
And I see Victoria, and I see my parents are there, and I see my friend Simon Lyons is there, and I see that Kenny's there in his Adidas look, and I just think, what are you doing here? Then it's all starting. The second Jeff starts talking, I knew that I didn't have the legal representation that I thought I had.
I have lengthy notes, 20 pages of notes that I write out beforehand. I got maybe one sentence into my comments before the judge jumped down my throat.
I remember vividly the judge interrupting the presentation when they got to the argument about Philbrick's parents having divorced, where he said, a lot of people get divorced, they don't turn to crime.
What I was talking about was the horrible childhood that Inigo had, where his father blew up the family. It was a tremendous psychological blow to Inigo.
It was a silly, silly thing to say, and it made the father very upset, I could see, because it was passing some of the responsibility over to him, which ultimately he was not responsible for. I felt very uncomfortable seeing what I saw.
The judge's response was, and you're blaming that on his selling more than 100% of various artwork to multiple individuals without their knowledge. That's because his parents divorced. And I said, no, things happen. You're not born bad. You know, something had happened. There was a catalyst that changed Inigo.
Whatever sob story that Philbrick's team was trying to paint really didn't move me much at all, and it certainly didn't move the judge.
I felt that the judge was not being fair enough. He was wealthy, he was white, he was privileged, he was educated, he had some funny accent and a funny name. So Inigo was required to be punished, to be beaten like a drum. Inigo was the last part of the sentencing before the sentencing decision is given by the judge. I had gotten, frankly, my ass beaten for the last 45 minutes, and I felt that it was important that Inigo hit a home run now.
And Jeff says to me, you're gonna have to beg. He's pissed. You're gonna get a really significant sentence. And I go, what? But you literally came to see me yesterday at the prison, and you said that you didn't think this was gonna be so bad and that you had a lot of mitigating factors to present. And now, all of a sudden, you want me to beg.
Inigo had lengthy notes. It was like, War and Peace he had in front of him that he had written with all the things he wanted to say. And he was speaking in such a refined manner. It was ridiculous, frankly. I turned to him and said, listen, enough with these fucking notes. I want you to be raw, and I want you to tell him how you're really feeling. I said, I want to hear it from the heart. And that's what he did. I have a thing that I do before every sentencing, just as it starts. Within the first 30 seconds or so, listening to the judge's tone, I write on the back of my notes what I think the sentencing is going to be. And I'm right, this is creepy, I'm right 95% of the time. To the day, I'm right. With Inigo, we were 30 seconds into it, and I wrote 7 on the back of the paper.
He was sentenced to 7 years as a deterrent, in the words of the judge.
I had walked into that room thinking that I was probably 6 months, 9 months, 10 months to the door.
How did you feel?
It was like a death.
I picked Jeffrey Lichtman because he was a fucking salesman. That's why. And he said to me, I promise you, if you pick me, you won't ever regret it the day that your boy walks out. And it's like, you made me think Inigo was going to walk out then and there. I got shafted, I feel. Inigo got shafted.
She wanted less time. Again, everybody wants less time. But as I tried to gently remind her to get him out of this, where he would spend roughly 3 or 4 years in prison for $86 million, was a pretty tremendous result.
They bundled me out of that courtroom so quickly, my head spun, and I'd managed to blow a kiss to Victoria, and then I was back in prison land.
It was the worst day of my life, by far. To the point that when it was done and he was handcuffed and walked off and looking at 7 years, I walked out of the courthouse and I just ran. And I had like cameras chasing me, paparazzi trying to chase me. And I just thought like my whole world has just come crashing down again.
I was sent from MDC Brooklyn to the Correctional Institute, LSCI Allenwood. Because they are so overcrowded, they send me to the SHU. The SHU is the hole, is the box. You get to go to the shower 3 times a week, and aside from those 3 showers, you will not leave that little room until you leave that little room. Now, I did 60-some days in the SHU waiting for bed space.
This call is from a federal prison. From
Phil Frick.
Hey, my friend.
I'm so happy to talk to you, Harpo.
I'm so happy to talk to you.
Think you better hurry up and come back.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna do my best,
We need
Drew.
more of you.
Is it super depressing for me to come during Christmas? Or does it make it less depressing? I don't know. The whole thing is fucking depressing.
The whole thing is fucking depressing. Write to me, I fucking adore you.
Oh, I love you. Shit, we're
I
gonna
love
cut
you.
off. Oh. You know, you could say he's a criminal, but like, who hasn't done something illegal? But when you play at such a high end of life, there are huge risks and gambles that people take, and some get away with them.
Since Inigo scandal broke, the worst assumptions and the worst fears about the art market, that people say, oh, the art market is so shady, you can't trust anyone, it's unregulated. Like, it's all true. Here it is.
Here we are, years after his fraud was revealed and he was finally captured after going on the run. All of his victims, Mr. Pesco and others, they live with this on a daily basis, in large part because everything's still making its way through the court system.
It's a total insane like cesspool of competing lawsuits right now because nobody knows who owns what.
Inigo's story is a tale of greed and of arrogance. The big question is, where is all the money and where is all the artwork? Are there vast stores of art sitting in a warehouse somewhere that we don't know about? And I wonder where a lot of the money is stashed.
Do you have any money?
No. What the fuck on earth? How could anyone spend $86.7 million?
Where is it?
What the fuck are you asking me for? I don't no idea. I don't know.
To vilify a person for their transgressive antics in the art world is just simply blaming one person for the crimes of the many. It must send a shiver down the backs of every other collector and gallerist because they know that by one degree of separation they're doing the same thing.
Well, it's just not true. For every bad actor like Philbrick, there's thousands of good actors in the art world. The art world gets a bad rap for being dirty, and a lot of the high-profile matters that everybody reads about are the worst of the worst, and Philbrick's an example of that.
Philbrick as a story probably couldn't have happened at any other point. It was an extraordinary decade. Money was fast, money was loose, money was cheap.
Oh my God, this is him. Inigo's here. Baby, who's that?
Daddy.
Oh.
How are you then, girl? Little hug? Oh.
What does the future hold? That's the question. What does the future hold?
I'm saying my mommy and daddy.
The ambition is to get back to doing what I was doing. I was a great art dealer, and I hope to be able to earn that seat at the table back.
Could you trust him again?
I'm not looking to, no. I mean, I just wouldn't want to. I won't give him a second chance until I know that he's willing to change and be a better person and take responsibility.
He can't just jump back into art dealing without, like, the government ostensibly grabbing him and saying, like, no, pay back the $86 million you owe first, right? That's part of restitution.
I have no idea what Philbrick thinks he could do, but I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
Would I do business with him? Not in a hurry. But there is no mechanism in the art world for banning him from participating. If he paid his bills, I think the art world would be forgiving. The art world, and by extension capital, has an infinite capacity to forgive.
I'm obviously in no position to do anything other than say how sorry I am. But there is a small part of me that thinks, what about all the good deals?